Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you all for attending the 2024 Land Pac Senior Enlisted panel. The theme for this panel is the evolving role of NCOs in the land power domain in the Indo-Pacific region. Our panel members will discuss the significance of continuous professional development of the NCOs to adapt to the changing dynamics of warfare and effectively train their units. Discuss strategies and initiatives aimed at enhancing NCO leadership skills, fostering mentorship programs, and empowering NCOs to effectively guide and inspire their subordinates. Finally, they will discuss how NCOs are adapting to new challenges, such as emergent technologies, asymmetric warfare, regional security dynamics, and the importance of their flexibility and versatility in supporting mission success. I am honored to introduce our distinguished panel members this afternoon. They are from your left to right: Sergeant Major Joy Kitashima, 3rd MEF, Sergeant Major, Okinawa, Japan. Chief Warrant Officer Sanjay Singh, SMA, Singapore Armed Forces, Army, Singapore. Warrant Officer Kim Fellingham, RSM, Army, Australia. Warrant Officer Class 1 Wiramu Moffat, SMA, New Zealand Army. Command Sergeant Major Jackie Love, United States Forces, Korea. And our moderator today is SMA Daniel A. Daly, United States Army retired, Vice President, NCO and Soldier Programs, Association of the United States Army. Join me in giving them a round of applause, please. All yours, SMA.
Aloha. And good afternoon. Hopefully you're enjoying day one of the Land Pac conference this year, the best Land Pac ever. That's a paid advertisement that General Brown makes me say every time we say the word Land Pac. But I just want to thank you for joining us. As you can see from the introductions, we have a very esteemed group of senior leaders from across the Pacific region. Thank you, panel members, for joining us today. And I know this is going to be a very insightful panel. I also want to let you know, for those that did decide to join us for our senior enlisted panel this afternoon, Jack Haley, the Vice President for Membership and Meetings, has authorized me to allow you all to have a free membership to AUSA. That's right. So those of you that didn't elect to be a member during registration, all you have to do is go out to our membership booth immediately after this, let them know that you were at the SEL panel, get a free membership. All right. So each of the panel members will take a few minutes to discuss the areas that they want to talk about in the evolving role of NCOs in land power domain. And at the conclusion of their remarks, we will take questions. So I'd ask you to start thinking about your questions now for this esteemed panel. We have some of our AUSA staff that will be walking around with the question cards. If you need a card, just please raise your hand. Mr. Alex and Christine will be walking around, so please get their attention if you have questions. So let's get things started. And Sergeant Major Kitashima, let's start with you, please.
All right. First and foremost, SMA, Sergeant Major Burzak, thank you. This is a wonderful opportunity. I'm completely humbled to have the opportunity to be here today, so thank you. I am also a member of AUSA now, as I found out this morning. So that's some good stuff. That's some good stuff. So Sergeant Major Joy Kitashima, I'm the 3 Marine Expeditionary Force Sergeant Major. 3 MEF is headquartered out of Okinawa, Japan. We encompass approximately 25,000 Marines and sailors spread across and housed in Hawaii, mainland Japan, and in Okinawa, Japan. That 25,000 includes our unit deployment programs, which are rotational squadrons and battalions from our CONUS installations that also come support our efforts. They also incorporate our active reservists. So we also have reservists out there. We have a unique interoperability with our installations because they are the platforms from which we will fight. So though the 25,000 does not include the 10,000 Marines, civilians, and master labor contractors that we have on our installations, they are very much an integral part of what we do at 3 MEF in order to fully accomplish our mission. You know, at the end of the day, 3 MEF, we want to integrate the capabilities of the MAGTF with those of the Joint Force, allies, and partners across all domains, utilizing tempo as a weapon to overwhelm and defeat the adversary. We cannot do that without the over 11,000 non-commissioned officers and staff non-commissioned officers that I am fortunate enough to serve. We work in how we develop these NCOs. I was asked for this question. I was asked, Sergeant Major, how does a Sergeant Major of 3 MEF do this? And I say wholeheartedly and fully, I certainly don't do this alone. We have an entire network of leaders that develop our NCOs and staff NCOs. But I'd start with, we work to facilitate service level initiatives. Service level initiatives like our talent management initiative, the right Marine at the right place at the right time. We also, in terms of retention, I don't think there's an enlisted soldier, sailor, Marine, or airman, or Guardian, or Coast Guardsman that wouldn't say that retention is first and foremost in our minds. So everything we do, how are we developing that individual service member to be the next me, right? And then also working some of our training and education command initiatives for continued advanced training. In doing all of this, I'm also very aware that an individual performs better when they have a sense of purpose and they have a greater understanding of how they fit into the warfighting equation. So I think the easiest way or the best way to explain it is we attempt to instill in them a greater understanding of our advantages and how they contribute to those advantages. First and foremost, our advantage, we believe, is our allies and partners, a strong network of allies and partners. We incorporate our NCOs and staff NCOs into any one of all of the 38 exercises or engagements. We have foreign area staff NCOs that help engage continuously on a daily level. We utilize our NCOs and staff NCOs as LNOs, finding the right Marine to go to the right location at the right time. And additionally, including one of our advantages is our focus on maneuver warfare and decentralized actions to create superior tempo. Commanders provide the intent and allow the Marines to execute. This fosters that bias for action. There's not a time that we speak with our young Marines that we are not continuously speaking about small unit level leadership and emphasizing the value that has to 3MEF and the mission. That also we emphasize as an advantage the discipline of the force, their physical and mental discipline. So certainly not just physical and not just mental, but the two of them. We can do that, and we do that by all of the engagements and exercises, putting these Marines in the horns of a dilemma, placing them in a location where they are very uncomfortable, where they are forced to make very difficult decisions so we can best simulate the environment that they will face if and when the fight were to come to us. And lastly, just brilliance in the basics. And it's a term that sometimes I think we use off the cuff and half-heartedly, but frankly, brilliance in the basics is so very important. What is your craft? First and foremost, every Marine, you identify first and foremost as a United States Marine. That is it. From private to general, you are a Marine first. And then you go into your specialty. And are you a master of that specialty? Whether you're a motor T mechanic, whether you're a flighty operator, whatever, where you're a straight leg infantryman, whatever your specialty is, being a master of that specialty. And also them understanding, I think we've placed a lot of emphasis on brilliance in the basics in terms of returning to analog in terms of degraded GPS and communications degraded environments, What are we doing? Are we going to have to break out maps and compasses? And yes, the answer is yes. Returning them to more of an analog environment. So those are the things overall that we do to empower, and I use that word gently, empower our NCOs and staff NCOs, because the over 11,000 of them, they truly are our key to victory. Thank you, SMA.
SMA.
Yeah. Thank you, SMA Daly, Sergeant Braggs. Thank you for having an allied country up here so that I can share my perspective of Singapore Army. The Singapore Army is a bit different. We are a conscript army. We see new soldiers every 2 years. And that is our biggest challenge, because every 2 years, we have to make sure our NCOs are ready to train these new soldiers, get them ready, and then after that, they go into reserves for 10 years. And the biggest challenge for us is, as we look towards 2040 and navigate the dynamic landscape of the modern warfare now, we need to make sure our NCOs are ready to engage our soldiers and get ready for the next battle coming up. So what we're doing is we are looking at 4 fronts. We are looking at how we can educate our NCOs better. We're looking at overseas exposure. We are starting a mentor and mentee scheme. And we are also being more ambidextrous. And this is one way, a few ways where we look at how we can expose our NCOs in different domains, and they can tackle the new landscape they're working in. In the education front, we are introducing a lot of new education programs like work-learn scheme. We are giving them stackable micro-credential degree programs. We are putting them into these programs. And all these programs are aligned to our system of training. We are giving them data analytics, sports science, because we are reaching out this new way of dealing with our young soldiers coming in so that we can tackle their issues and then we can train them better to be better soldiers. We are also looking at overseas exposure. We are sending our NCOs overseas for courses, symposiums, seminars, all this to expose them of how our allied countries are moving, how our other countries are working, how our other NCOs are dealing with. This develops their warfighting skills and also allow us to find the gaps that we are lacking in, and this helps us grow as NCOs. And the biggest thing is we are starting these mentor-mentee schemes where we have a lot of senior NCOs who can guide and make sure they pass on their knowledge to the younger NCOs. We are getting the battalion RSM and above to be mentored by senior war specs so that they can pass on the knowledge. And for the junior war specs, our NCOs, they will be groomed by the senior NCOs within their own arms. And this will develop them to be better soldiers and better NCOs so that they can deal with our conscript army coming in. The last part is ambidextrous. This is something that we're going to try out with the new multi-domain efforts that's going on. We are getting our NCOs to be trained in different arms. Cross-vocation training, we're going to set them for success. For example, like armor infantry soldier or NCO being trained to be an infantry soldier, to be a fighting infantry soldier. So we are trying a lot of these various ways where we can get our NCOs to be trained not only in one domain, but at least 2 or 3 domains. So this makes them more deployable, and they understand how they work together as a multi-domain. So all these are small nuggets that we are doing so that our NCOs can be more, I would say, educated, but educated in the right way, so they can plow back to the system. They can groom the young NCOs coming up. Because the biggest challenge for us is, as a conscript army, we get soldiers coming in that do not want to serve, but they are forced to serve because of our regulations. And this allows them to connect with them. And the biggest thing is it allows us to connect not only with the soldiers, but also with the officers' corps. So this allows us to think align, and we bridge that gap. And it helps us develop our soldiers better. And these are things that is important to us, because in the long run, I guess every army believes in the thing is the biggest thing that we share with our NCOs is always to remember our purpose, our ethos and our values, and the significance of donning the uniform. All these things gives us a sense of purpose of why we are in this business, and why when you deal with the conscript army, you need to show them that that's the purpose of why they are being brought into the Army to serve the 2 years and go on to the next 10 years as a reserve, because this is where we belong. And as a small country in a big region in Indo-Pacific, we need to, first thing first, need to look after ourselves before we look out for others. So these are areas that we are looking at. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, SMAC. Sergeant Major Fleming.
Good afternoon, teammates. It is fantastic to be back here at LandPack. Absolute privilege to be talking with you today, and I certainly want to shout out to Scott and Dan and your teammates for making us feel very welcome. Firstly, I've been fortunate to come to LandPack for a few years now. This forum is like an annual pilgrimage for me, where I have the opportunity to take the time and reflect, which is really important. And as NCOs, I don't think we do it enough. But come together and see the example of our mutual respect for each other that continues to grow and is extremely important as we move forward in the current climatic environment. It also highlights for me the importance of being the best fighting force that Australia can be, and also a partner of choice within our region. This conference reminds me the importance of our institutions as the experts in the land domain, and why revolutionary technology and other battlefield advancements, whilst effective, will never substitute boots on the ground. In my opinion, the US, Pacific partners, and Australia's alliance is strong and enduring, and collectively we will always be stronger together. When I consider the responsibilities and contributions of our NCOs in a modern conflict scenario, the Gaza Strip, the conflict there comes to mind, where war is teetering on the brink of a messy and bloody climax. Israel's decision to seize the border crossing into the southern city of Rafah in order to destroy Hamas seems like a familiar chapter in a grim part of any war. Soldiers slugging it out in grinding, destructive and complex urban terrain that may ultimately kill thousands of civilians and destroy whole cities. While some parts of the terrain might be different to the parts in our region, the need for NCOs to be adaptive, innovative and be optimistic remains extant. As highlighted this morning by General Flynn, it remains surprising to me also that a number of decision makers and military experts today believe wars are being revolutionised by technology, reducing the need for boots on the ground as machines may take over. It is also not unusual for those uneducated military analysts to argue that drones, AI, and the rapid adaptation of commercial technologies, as seen in current conflicts, are creating a genuine military revolution. We all know that this same claim, these were made in 1991 at the time of the Gulf War and during the initial phases of 2003 with the invasion in Iraq. We now know that these hopes proved illusionary and that wars will remain dirty, bloody, unpredictable and chaotic. Technology improvements may temporarily tip the balance of a conflict in the favour of anyone who can adapt quickly, but they do not change war's fundamentals around human nature and behaviour, and also the other side's ability to learn and adapt quicker than ourselves. This is why our NCOs need to adapt to the challenging dynamics of warfare, but still be experts in close combat and soldiering skills. Understanding the context of the ever-evolving security challenges in our region is also important, because it allows our soldiers to understand the why, whilst providing them with the purpose. That is why any opportunity for us to understand each other's cultures as well as the environmental and human terrains of our region, needs to be taken. Russia has suffered an estimated 147,000 combat casualties in the first year of its invasion in Iraq, which is not unusually high by historical standards in conflict. Most injuries have been inflicted by old-fashioned artillery shells, not by drones and high-tech missiles. What has changed with technology is that there is now nowhere to hide, and our adversaries' reach is much further. Moving forward, we need to be adapting and developing our TTPs, and in some cases, relearning. We have been here before. Defensive fortifications, strategic lines, and heavy use of artillery and tanks are inevitable. These are human soldiers reminding us why our armies and being experts in the land domain is so important. There is an ever-increasing responsibility and contribution needed by our NCOs in the pursuit of regional security. Today's NCOs fight in a land domain that is influenced by multiple domains. So training, interoperability, trust and relationships absolutely matter. It is far too late to build trust and relationships when we are in the fight. We have witnessed in the wars across the Middle East in previous decades that decisions made at the tactical level can have strategic level effects. The next fight will be no different. Armies who enable innovation, have a calculated risk tolerance, and break down the barriers that stifle interoperability will also be the best at deterrence. We are in the game of deterrence as tasked by all of our governments. Nobody wants war. However, if we are not ready for conflict, the ultimate cost will be in human lives. Thank you.
Thank you so much. SMA Muff.
Hey, kia ora koutou katoa. I ngā rangatira mā. Scott, thanks for having us along. Dan, SMA, great to be here. SMA for New Zealand, a really small force, a little over 7,500 full-time and reserve forces, so pretty niche and always doing what's needed. The reason I raise that is when you're so finite, you have to be really good generalists and do the basics well, and I think that's what a small army does. You know, I was asked as part of this panel to sort of dig into the evolution of the NCO and how they're adapting to this current security landscape, and maybe give some attribution, also highlight how we're doing that. And I think the first thing I had to do is ask myself, did we or are we evolving? And I agree with my panelists. I think we are, we have, and we always will. There's a deeper debate maybe on whether we adapted or whether we adopted the current security environment. And I think we tend to look back in hindsight and say we probably got it all right. But I was here 30 years ago with a lot of people in this room, and it certainly took us a lot of lessons to get where we are today. And I use that as a context or a backdrop for the way I'm going to answer the question today, which is really why did we adapt and how have we adapted? And try and do that in 8 minutes. Look, I went out and asked an old friend of mine, SMA number 7, his name's Bob Davies. I said, hey, how have we adapted, Bob? And he said, Moo, NCOs don't adapt, they just get old and angry. And I, well, thank you very much, Bob, for your insights. But listen, we're on the stage, many of the CSMs, some ages in the audience, we're questioning this all the time. Whether it was Kim in Perth last year, whether it was Paul last week in London, or me in Wellington a couple of months ago, we're asking the question all the time, what are our roles and what are our responsibilities? And the general feedback, if I could paraphrase, was our NCO roles haven't changed at all. But the responsibilities and the manner in which we undertake those responsibilities has changed dramatically. And General Flynn talked this morning about soft power and hard power. The hard isn't that hard to do. But the soft power, the bit that requires EQ, takes a lot more time. So I think, you know, in answering this, yes, we have evolved, and yes, we will continue to evolve. 3 things that I really wanted to highlight today and change the tune a little bit about not so much what our people are doing in terms of mastery and military matters in training is really about the philosophical piece about whether we have been aware, whether our education has got better, and how networked we are. Those are the 3 points I really want to raise about why we adapted. So the first point, awareness and understanding, I think, is central to NCO evolution. I think NCOs have adapted a lot through self-interest, wide media, the information age, and so they're just smarter. They're aware of more. And with that greater awareness, our NCOs have had to lift correspondingly to that. So what I'm saying, I guess, is I think our NCOs, maybe unlike me 30 years ago, they are strategically aware like we've never been before. And that allows an adaptation in the way they educate. 2 decades of commentary about a Pacific that has been in turmoil is just flooding the net. And so I just think our NCOs are a lot smarter. Look, in terms of an educated force, NCOs are definitely more educated than they were. We continue to add more to the syllabus. Home stations and countries are very aware of what's going on, what's right, what are the challenges, and what are the responses to the things we have to do in security cooperation. I'm seeing that our NCOs are studying that, they're practicing it, and in many ways they are mastering the tool sets required to work in this theatre versus another one. A recent visit to Fiji last month, I saw one of my staff sergeants on a course with his Fijian peers. The syllabus was great, he loved the company, but the real gold was that he went away to a village that he hadn't been to in 25 years and reconnected his roots. So sometimes the takeaway is a lot deeper than uniform. But my last point really shapes around that, and that's around human bonds. I just think we're a heck of a lot more networked than we ever were before. And again, I heard General Brown and General Flynn say that this morning. 20 years of campaigning in Iraq, Afghanistan, the Levant, we had to team to succeed against an adversary that was pretty wily. We've been able to come back to the Pacific after a period of, let's call it distraction, and we've been able to inherit those old relationships. And whether it's me kicking in with Sergeant Major Waima in Kunduz 10 years ago, one of my Sergeant Majors who was in Somalia 30 years ago, those relationships mature, and they are very mature right now. And I don't think we've ever been stronger. Look, I'll transition to my last point and hand over to the sweet talking Alabama man, Jackie Love. He's going to ring this together. But I'll just give you one how. And I think it's an area where NCOs are getting much better, and that's their cultural empathy, their cultural awareness, their ability to be open. I don't think 30 to 40 years ago we were as good as we are now. We know traditions. We understand value set. We get after language and cultural networking like we've never done before. And at the heart of that is people-to-people connections. People want to be on a winning team. People want to succeed. And I think we do that very well in the NCO Corps, considering the breadth of rank we have from private first class through to sergeant major. And I think those are interior lines, to steal General Flynn's comment one more time. Those are people interior lines. So I'll leave it with that. Thanks very much for having me.
That's great.
Thank you, SMA. Thank you.
SMA Daly, thanks General Brown, sir, General Haley, and Sergeant Major Burzak, and Sergeant Major Schmidt incoming as well. And really thanks to everyone taking time out today to be a part of this. I'm going to start with Anyan Hashmanika, Janun, Jack Love, Juan Wansa, Imni Da. And that is about my extent of Hangul. But that was my introduction saying I am Sergeant Major Jack Love. But I will really start with this. I believe our Army, Navy, Air Force, Marine Corps, Space Force, along with our partners and allies, exist for one reason and one reason only. And it is to deploy, fight, and win when called upon against anybody, anywhere, anytime. And sometimes we can lose sight of that. But I think the glue that holds all of that together and keeps us all on azimuth are the non-commissioned officers and petty officers across our great militaries. They understand that in order to be effective in combat, you have to master individual and small unit tasks. Things like being an expert at medical life-saving skills, things like being an expert infantryman, or whatever your branch or MOS may be, is critically important to our success. I have the privilege to be the Command Sergeant Major for General Paul LaCamera, and he wears 3 hats. And I'm going to briefly mention those 3 hats because our non-commissioned officers get to experience a very robust, multinational, combined, and joint headquarters each and every day. And a lot of people don't realize what we have in the Republic of Korea when it comes to U.S. forces and our member state nations. But United Nations Command is made up of 17 member states. And their mission is ultimately to enforce the armistice. And if armistice were to go to crisis and then potentially conflict, they would integrate member state forces in accordance with the O Plan. Combined Forces Command is the heartbeat of everything we do on the Korean Peninsula. And that is our ROC-US alliance. That is non-commissioned officers and petty officers working together every day at headquarters at echelon, from the battalion up to 2ID, 8th Army, and U.S. Forces Korea. And then last but not least, or what I should say is under CFC, if we were to go to conflict, everyone on the Korean Peninsula or supporting it would fight under the authorities of the CFC commander. And then last but not least, U.S. Forces Korea. And that's our great soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, and Guardians that focus on combat readiness. They wake up each and every day to make sure that if we need to, we can execute non-combatant evacuations to get our families, our veterans, our retirees out of harm's way. And they do that incredibly well. But I try to always tie what we do around the commander's 4 lines of operation and 2 lines of effort. And line of operation 1 is defend the homelands. And General LaCamera makes that plural on purpose. And every non-commissioned officer understands that's why we're there. And it's not to just defend the Republic of Korea, because make no mistake, DPRK and KJU has reach. Our job is to make sure that integrated deterrence limits his capabilities, and we're going to do just that. Line of Operation 2, strengthen the alliance. We've been there with the Korean people and the Korean military for 70 years, shoulder to shoulder, and it is ironclad, and we're not going anywhere. And I remind people often that across the entirety of the Indo-Pacific Command, and that's many nations, there are 5 that we have mutual defense treaties with. That means something to the United States of America, and one of those 5 is the Republic of Korea. Third line of effort is prepare for combat. That's why we exist. And we have to do it live, virtual, and constructive. We have to have reps and sets. And, you know, I've said for many years, if you can't do it live, you probably can't do it. But we have to take all the tools in our kit bag so that we get the reps and sets that we need in order to fight and win if needed. And then last but not least is build coalitions. We have never and will never fight alone. We're going to need every partner and every ally to provide whatever they can provide to that fight. Some may just be medical supplies, others may be combat forces, but we need to have a unified voice, and as the USAPAC motto is, one team, and be committed to that. And then our 2 lines of effort. One is take care of our people. And that doesn't matter if it's our service members, our family members, contractors, civilians, but taking care of people, just like Fight Tonight, cannot be a bumper sticker. It has to mean something. It's like non-commissioned officers, you know, at the entry level, if a service member has a problem, it's our problem until it's solved. So we can't say, go get your finance fixed. Sometimes we have to really invest time to make sure that's happening. And then line of effort 2 is gain and maintain information advantage. That will be critical in armistice, and it will be vital in conflict. But when I think about non-commissioned officers, you know, I think about Sergeant, I'll just say E5, I'll keep it Army here. I think they really do 3 things, fundamentally, regardless of their MOS. They train, that's their job. They lead, you hope, by outstanding personal example, and they inspect, and that's a myriad of things. And I think that's where we're failing just a little bit in the inspection arena. And it's, so we got to tighten that up a little. And you just take it through the battalion level command sergeant major. They drive, shape, and influence the organization based off the commander's intent and priorities. And I believe the big four or big five will always be fundamental to us winning in conflict. Things like physical, mental, emotional, spiritual fitness, toughness. Things like marksmanship. My commander says there are two types of people on the battlefield. You're either a target or a marksman. Things like medical life-saving skills, being an expert at your battle drill number one, whatever your battle drill number one may be, and then fostering a culture of professionalism, of dignity and respect, of discipline, and then reminding our teams that at the end of the day, our profession is built on trust, mutual trust. It is truly the bedrock of our profession. But I also believe that trust is earned in drops and lost in buckets. And I challenge our non-commissioned officers and petty officers all the time. We cannot afford to lose buckets of trust with our officer corps. I believe we have the U.S. military. I believe we have the best military in the world. I believe that because of our officers, and most will say because of our non-commissioned officers. That's true as well. I love the NCO Corps. I've been one for a long time. But it's our officers that give us the authority, they empower us, they hold us accountable, they trust us to deliver on the things that only we can do. I certainly don't try to do General Cameron's job, nor could I. And I don't want him trying to do mine either. There are things that only a non-commissioned officer can do. So I'll kind of pause there. Certainly, again, I'll end SMA by just saying I really am privileged to have the opportunity today, and certainly look forward to questions you may have. Thank you.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, I have to tell you, sitting up here, you can't be less than impressed with the knowledge and skill that you see sitting here. And I hope our adversaries are watching this, because what they have to fear is the incredible capabilities of our non-commissioned officer corps across the entire Indo-Pacific region. And this is just one fine example of the representation of the countries that are here. But you know, behind them are hundreds of thousands of devoted non-commissioned officers and soldiers in their armies. But they sure have sent excellent representation. So I have a lot of questions here. Thank you to the audience. Keep those questions coming. We're going to use all the way to the end of our time that we have. But I got one specific question for each of you, and then I have some general questions. So we'll start with the specific questions. SMA Singh, how do our NCOs' roles and input fit into the decision-making process?
Okay, I think it's important for the NCOs to understand the soldiers under them and also how the officers think, because we are always the gap or the bridge. So if you know how your soldiers are thinking, especially how they are developed or how educated they are, you must understand how you can connect with them, especially in this age where you have the new Gen Z soldiers coming in. Their thinking is very different. They're influenced by social media, by technology. So to NCOs, you need to be educated and you need to understand those things. And this is where we can tackle them. We can give them the right education so they understand all this, and then they can make the right decision. At the same time, they must understand how the officers think, and then they can always share with them the challenges that the soldiers has. So this is where, in the Singapore context, we are trying to see how we can train the NCOs to give them the knowledge, the head knowledge, in the sense of data analytics, sports science, and all this, and especially resilience, because as you see the young soldiers coming up, their resilience is lesser, is weaker than how we were trained in the olden days. And these are our challenges. And the NCOs must be ready with all this knowledge so that they can make the right decision. Because any decision that you make can cost life, and that's not what we want. So these are areas that we are tapping on how we can groom our young junior NCOs and senior NCOs to make sure that they have the right knowledge to make the right decision at the hard time, and they understand how to bridge the gap. So this is where I think it's important that we set our NCOs up for success by giving them the right areas to improve on with the right knowledge so that they are in the right space when they make the decision. So these are areas that we look at.
Yeah, thank you, SMA. And we've all talked about the rapid changes of technology. All of our armies struggle to keep up with our adversaries' capabilities. And the next innovations that we need to enable our soldiers and non-commissioned officers and officers on the battlefield to effectively be able to counter those capabilities. SMA Moffett, how do we keep our non-commissioned officers adaptive and up to date with training and education, not only to fight and win with their soldiers, but with that modern technology and the capabilities our adversaries continue to increase?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Dan. Look, I was thinking about this just now, actually, and I think part of the adaptation is really making our NCOs smarter at design. You know, soldiers have to focus on the basics, as Jack said, leave that headspace for when you're in real crisis. But what I mean is really shifting the mindset of new soldiers, sort of what I talked about in terms of being aware. How aware can you make a soldier? How can you make them think differently about problem sets, turn them into problem solvers very early, you know? Then they can see the horizon change, they get that time and place ahead of them, and they're able to switch much more agile, you know, when they do that. So I think largely, if I was to shorten it up, it's around shifting the thinking of soldiers and NCOs at a much younger age, whilst maintaining the basics in combat.
Thank you, SMA. Now, we've heard from General Flynn this morning that building relationship is key to integration of multi-domain capabilities within the Indo-Pacific region. It simply has to be done by all of us, because none of us can cover this vast space. Sergeant Major Kitasima, can you explain how the Marine Corps fosters these critical relationships within the Joint Force, their partners and allies, and give us some specific examples of what your Marines are doing across the theater?
Yeah, thanks, SMA. Key and incredibly critical, those relationships, absolutely. We can surge service members, we can surge capabilities, but we cannot surge trust in a time of crisis. So it's important that our service members at echelon understand that they are one of the most tangible, visible, and capable contributions that we have to allied assurance and adversary deterrence. You know, force design, we've been in the midst of it for the better portion of the last decade at this point. And the need, very well understood, the need was to be able to take the Marine Corps and have it operate on a different scale and be able to function in the littorals. A portion of force design, not the entirety, but the portion that is most relevant to 3MEF. So we have, over recent years, reorganized, we've deactivated, reactivated, and stood up organizations in an effort to better synthesize the needs of the Indo-PACOM commander with that of our force design requirements. One example, we have stood up 3rd Marine Littoral Regiment. It's here at Marine Corps Base Hawaii. In 3rd MLR, we have 3rd LCT. We took our infantry regiment, 3rd Marines, redesignated it to 3rd MLR, and then took our battalions, and we made 3rd LCT. 3rd LCT, the Marines of 3rd LCT, are designed to be able to function in small independent teams in the littorals below the threshold of adversary sensors. In that capability, our Marines, NCOs, staff NCOs, must be able to employ and integrate both organic and non-organic sensors. We cannot do this without the capabilities that exist in the joint force and allies and partners. So building those relationships very much helps 3rd LCT in the completion and being able to meet their mission essential task of maritime domain awareness.
Thank you, Sergeant Major. Sergeant Major Felmingham, you know, I'm going to put you on the spot here a little bit, but what do you feel is the most important or critical role of the NCOs in building sustained readiness?
Yeah, readiness is a challenge, and it's always been a challenge. It's not going to go anywhere anytime soon. Particularly with the changing environment. I think there might be a, once again, Australian perspective, is we've got a challenge around ready for what? And if we think about the last couple of decades, we were on a cycle supporting operations in the Middle East. So you could pretty much be in a unit or a formation and you would know that, I need to be on a readying cycle, I then deploy, I get on a reset cycle, and then the rotation continues. The challenge for NCOs today is to be able to motivate our soldiers, sailors, aviators, Marines, about ready for what. Now, we know that our strategic circumstances have changed. It's all over the media, social media. There is a void of information there. It's about pulling apart what is important for the soldier of today and reminding us all that readiness is not something we do today and we are still ready tomorrow. It is evolutionary and it is evolving. And then the other part I think we need to spend a bit more time on is, whilst we might be ready as a soldier when it comes to kit, equipment, platforms, the individual, we've also got to make sure that we've got the readiness of the families. Because I don't think it's been a long time since our families were in the fight. It looks different for readiness of a family when you are going to a ground of your choosing as opposed to the fight being maybe within our region.
Thank you, Sergeant Major. And Sergeant Major Love, you talked about the three commands and the big responsibility you and your commander have on the peninsula. What are some of the specific examples of ally and partner capacity building that you guys are currently doing to create that interoperability within the region?
Yeah, thanks, Esme. We plan and execute 3 annual events focused solely on non-commissioned officers and petty officers. And I won't speak to each of them, I don't have time, but the 3 events are Backbone University, which is focused on our Sergeant First Class, our gunnery sergeants, our master sergeants in the Air Force, our E7, just to use pay grade. And we bring in about 100 of those E7s across the Republic of Korea, across our component commands in the U.S. components, but we also use our United Nations command and bring in soldiers from the Philippines, Thai, and New Zealand. And last year we expanded it slightly to U.S. Forces Japan and are looking next year to bring in ground defense forces from Japan as well. But really what the course is, it's planned, trained, executed solely by non-commissioned officers, but we take senior enlisted leaders, like up here, across our environment, and they are immersed with those 100 E7s for the entirety of the week. There's sleep in the barracks with them, there's PT, there's movement to chow, obstacle course, you name the agenda throughout the week, but it's the opportunity to talk about combat, life, relationships, and we make sure each night there's a 2-hour block to really get after what's on their minds, because every Sergeant First Class, gunny comes from we all come from different perspectives. We come from different nations. And it's powerful what everyone is able to learn from each other. I can't measure it as I've done 2 of these now, but I can promise you the feedback I get from those non-commissioned officers across our nations is powerful. Because I don't think and maybe some of you as an E7 in the Army, maybe I didn't want that time with those sergeant majors on one hand, but had I gotten it, it may have given me even a greater understanding. We talk about understand, visualize, describe, direct, lead. Sometimes at the platoon sergeant level, it's good to see what might lie ahead, see the opportunities to shape our environment and to change policy or doctrine, or at least make recommendations to our bosses in those spaces. And then briefly on Mungadai, that's focused on sergeant majors. That's us. and it's a smoke fest. Pure and simple. It's like a mini pre-ranger, or best ranger, I should say. You're going to put about 60 miles on your feet with about a 55-pound load. You're going to get 3 MREs for the duration, and you're going to sleep in a patrol base. And it's going to, for lack of better words, it's going to suck. But we did it together. And not everybody made it, but most everyone did. But the shared hardships and soldiers, the support out there, who are the OPFOR and the backside support, they see those 60 sergeant majors, E9s, ROC US, other countries out there doing this, and they go, man, our sergeant majors can do exactly, we're doing what we expect them to do. And we talk about leading by example. I think it's critically important for us to continue to look in the mirror and remind ourselves as a non-commissioned officer that we don't have to serve. We get to. And there is no greater honor than looking in the mirror and it has your last name and it says U.S. or New Zealand or whatever, and it says Army, Navy, Air Force, etc. That's the privilege of a lifetime. And we get to lead our most treasured resource, and that's our kids and grandkids. So, and I won't speak to ROC US Keystone SMA because it's not our keystone, but it does get after shared capabilities across the peninsula and having a real understanding of what the ROC military is going to bring to the fight. And we don't want to get to know our teammates when the two-way firefight starts. So,
yeah. Thank you, Sergeant Major. Ladies and gentlemen, I have to apologize. We're not going to have enough time to get through all the great questions that you put on my lap. And I'm looking at the clock like now, and it's going a lot faster than I want it to. But General Brown won't let me stop time. He's got to come up here. But there is a specific question for each panel that I'd like to hear each of your point of view, because two of these are really good questions. So I'd like to get through both of them. So I'd ask you to kind of keep your comments short, but they're very important. We've all talked about how we need to increase interoperability and maintain the work that we've done across our allies and partners throughout the Pacific region. Training NCOs is one of the best ways to build that partner capacity. I think we all know that. However, in many of our non-English speaking countries, only officers are afforded the education to master the English language, which makes it difficult for us to share the high technical training courses with our non-commissioned officer corps against allied partner lines. What are you doing to combat that? And what is your thoughts on how we overcome that for the future? And we'll start with Sergeant Major Kitashima.
Okay. All right. Thanks, SMA. I think what I got from that, one of the things, certainly language is a barrier. I think it was Winston Churchill that said, the only thing worse than allies is not having allies, right? So it is incredibly difficult. The language barrier, I find with some of my counterparts, obviously all unclassified side, I'm using signal to communicate. I saw it in the Philippines last week, Egypt, all the time. So I think that technology has allowed us on an unclassified level to better communicate. That is a plus. I mentioned our FAO program, so we have a foreign area officer, foreign area staff NCO officer. Those individuals go to school and they are trained to understand that culture. They are trained to be able to receive, process, and send out. These are the lessons learned from this, and they live, eat, and sleep with these cultures daily. So we put people against the problem. We use breaking technologies or updated new technologies on an unclassified level. I would say we still struggle with every one of the partners that I've worked with since I've been in this seat with the classified level, right? I think that is our continued challenge that we're continuing to get after.
Thank you. SMA Singh.
I think in the Asia region, you have many countries with different languages, how the officers are brought up, how the NCOs are brought up, especially when you say educations and how to communicate. I think the biggest thing is to understand their culture of every country, or every soldiers, understand their culture, and then That's how you understand how you can actually communicate with them. And then when you get down dirty with them, you start to do the same thing as them, and then they start to realize that's the way you communicate. Instead of using language, but it's actually getting into the foxhole with them, doing the same thing, then they understand that, okay, this is how our language is. This is how we do it. And slowly and by norm, you see that's how our soldiers communicate, how our NCOs communicate, and that breaks the barrier of language, and that make it easier for us to ease into the job together with them. And that's where we have the same alignment and the same focus on what we are doing. Yeah, I think that's the way.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you. Look, before we can communicate, we've got to build trust. And the only way we build trust is by working together. And you all would see and maybe have been part of examples where we don't do, Australia working solely with New Zealand, Australia working solely with the US or with Singapore, multilateral exercises and activities on different, landscape, understanding the terrain as well as, the environment and the people will break down those barriers of language. And the example I'll use was the year before last, where I was at Super Garuda Shield, where there was, I think, up to about 14 nations. And in between the tactical level combat training were soldiers sitting next to soldiers. And I know if we've got the comms people here, with their iPhones using language apps so that they could communicate. We've got to do more of that. And I'm pretty pleased to say that certainly our superiors, our generals are all looking at what those opportunities look like, doing them more together, multiple, because we're challenged against resources, and one of the main resources is time. So we've got to do it right.
Yeah, I'll support Kim's thought on AI, using technology a bit better. I think the commercial market, the civilians use this a lot better. How you do that in a more sensitive space in our type of work, I think it would have to be worked through. Two little things that I think I'm aware of in our forces. One, look at the language settings of what we require, especially from partner forces, and ask, is that suitable? Is it reasonable? And what I would say is we are lowering that, especially with courses are longer and embedded. The second thing is using local nationals, other ethnicities who are already in your army, and bringing them across. And a classic example was a couple of months ago, we had people from Tonga, our musicians coming in. He didn't read too well in terms of the language level, but he could read music better than any of our people. That's the language that we needed to be working with. So, yeah, easy workarounds.
Thank you, SMA. And real quick.
Yep, I see it, SMA. We're pretty lucky in the Republic of Korea because we have Katusas, and they really help us with the challenges when it comes to communicating with our ROC teammates. But I believe that, as I started, we exist to deploy, fight, and win. And we better maximize the time and overcome whatever difficulties we have, be it by technology or whatever other language and how we learn that, because you're not going to figure it out in a two-way firefight. So we just have to commit to each other and then have the empathy and humility to not know it all. And we can learn. I have learned as much from my ROC teammates, hopefully, as they have learned from me. So I do think it's about spending time, making time to train together.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, for me.
Well, unfortunately, we're out of time, and I apologize. I got a lot of great questions up here, but the good news is our panel members will be here for the rest of the week. So please, if you've got a question for them, approach them. I know they'd be more than delighted to share their experiences with you and increase our interoperability across the Indo-Pacific region. I do have a public announcement. Command Sergeant Major Burzak is going to be hosting a senior enlisted social. So if you've received an invite for that this evening, that will be at the Hali IKEA, or did I say it right? I'm not really good with the Hawaiian stuff. I'm sorry, I apologize. At Fort Shafter. And transportation will be at the main lobby at $1,700 for all those who are invited. Ladies and gentlemen, as you can see, as you are impressed as I am with the incredible talent we have here on the stage, let's give our distinguished panel members a big round of applause.
Thank you, Kim.
Thank you, Sergeant Major. Thank you. I'll be followed by General Brown, who will introduce the next keynote speaker.